Birds are singing in the trees, all the leaves are falling in the breeze. The views all around are the best you've seen, living on the land.
Well, welcome to another exciting episode of Country Cousins, and of course today's hero is this fine man standing next to me, and your name is?
My name is Jacob, and I've taken photographs of the birds here in Gippsland.
Jacob who?
My name's Joseph Krijt.
Thank you very much, Jacob Krijt. And now we're off to check out some more of his amazing birds in cheeky, funky poses. Well, this is a lovely birdy-looking part of the garden.
Yes, this is the favourite spot of the little wattlebird. As you can see, there's lots of flowers around. The banksia is here behind me. There's more banksias over there, a sage over there, and they just love it here. And
the big buddleia and the butterflies too.
Yes, well, they will chase the butterflies later on when they're a bit tired.
Oh, what, the little wattlebirds will?
Yes, and probably the honeyeater as well.
They'll eat butterflies, will they, or just chase them?
I think they chase them, but they try to catch them. But in the beginning, they're just way too smart to evade the birds. But maybe, you know, when it's time to go for the butterflies, they might take one or two.
The little wattlebird and the New Holland honeyeater, from the photos I've seen you put up on Facebook, they have to be favourite birds of mine because they just seem to be so cheeky looking. You always catch them in wonderful poses, cheeky, funky poses, doing amazing things and preening their beautiful feathers with the light behind them. Yeah. What about the natures of these two birds?
Well, the New Holland honeyeater is really, really a cheeky bird. It's got incredible expressions with that white eye that he's got. It's a real character. It just does the strangest things, and it loves the water, and it loves company of other New Holland honeyeaters, and they just talk to each other like mad. It's just cheep, 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 cheep. And then here comes little wattlebird chasing the New Holland eater, but that's okay. They seem to evade each other pretty good.
Well, both of those birds seem to love your bird baths, and you keep your bird baths filled all the time, don't you?
Yes, well, you have to. You have to keep it clean. And if you do it regularly, the birds will know immediately when it's fresh or not. So after you've done the refreshing of the bath, you will see the birds coming in straight away.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
They love the way they fan all their feathers out, and with the light and the sun behind them. What are they doing? Drying off? It must feel good after a shower.
They go into the water because they have to get rid of their pests, or the lice, or anything that's crawling on the body or in the feathers. So they splash around, then they go out of the bath, and then they shake the water out of it. Then they start preening, of course, making the feathers neat again. So they take the pen in the mouth, and then they sort of smooth the feather. It's quite nice to see, but it's hard to capture because that movement is really very quick. It's like maybe a tenth of a second that they do that, and but they do it continuously. It's very nice. It's a beautiful thing to see.
Well, we do that, you were saying before, when you pick up a feather on the ground and you see a bit of it's out of place. And I've always done it, even from a kid. It's compulsory. You've got to smooth it.
Yep, you want to make it nice and just like it should be. What is interesting, when you do the smoothing of the feather, the side parts of the feather has barbs, so that's why it just neatly clings together. If it wouldn't have barbs, you would have feathers that would look scraggly, and the air can go through the feather when they're flying. So that's why they just nicely smooth them out. The barbs clip together, and then they're ready to fly. Most of the time you see the bird preening, and after it's done its preening, it flies away immediately.
The grey shrike thrush is another very favourite bird of mine. So I just love it. It's so pretty, and I love its voice.
Yes, that's one of those birds that a lot of people actually really like because of the song. In the beginning, when we went to Gippsland, we had a bit of a hard time, but this grey striped thrush, he was always around, and his sing-song was so beautiful that we called him the happy bird. So we turned our negatives into a positive. This grey striped thrush lives most of the time in the middle of the trees, but it also comes down to the ground and basically is everywhere. But the sing-song, yeah, that's something beautiful.
So this is beautiful habitat for those kind of birds, but you have a different sort of bird hangs out down by your creek and round the dams, don't you?
Yeah. Well, every habitat has its different birds. So, for instance, for the kookaburra, they love to be near the water and in the trees, and that's where they find their food. So let's check out a couple of those places.
Let's indeed. Now this dam is the site of your now famous duck and kookaburra stoush.
Yes, well, this is one of the most memorable moments that I've had here. Every day I drive to this dam when there was a Pacific black duck with 4 ducklings. So I wanted to photograph the ducklings and the duck. What happened was the Pacific black duck it went on that log over there at the back. It sat there and it called its ducklings. I had no idea why, and suddenly this kookaburra just comes in and tries to grab one of those ducklings. But the Pacific duck, he was a fierce enemy of the kookaburra, and they started fighting like mad.
Do you reckon the kookaburra was fighting it, or was it just being overpowered, fighting for its life?
No, it was going for the duckling. So it wanted to eat the duckling. I think it grabbed him, or that small duckling. So it sort of went down into the water, and then Mum was just fighting like crazy. And it bit the kookaburra, and the kookaburra was left for dead on the side. It was just completely like, ooh, I shouldn't have done this.
She pushed the kookaburra under the water and trying to drown it and everything,
Yes.
wasn't she?
Yep, that was amazing. I've never seen this before. And so that duck was so fierce. It showed all the corners of the room by figure of speech. It was just, and I just was happily clicking away. It was amazing. And so when I came home and looked at the photographs, I thought, well, this is one of the most impressive stories that I've could capture. That was, and it took quite a while, because after that, the duck fought off the kookaburra. I waited to see whether the kookaburra was still alive. That kookaburra took about 20 minutes to recover from that fight. And then,
Did it?
yes, and then it flew away. And we've got all the pictures, everything is documented. It was amazing to watch.
And how long do you reckon the fight lasted for?
Well, the fight was quite short. It was just a burst of energy, lots of splashing around, and the duck trying to get on top of the kookaburra, and it actually did. And the kookaburra then could escape. It was just an amazing thing that had happened. I've never seen that before. Yeah.
And the little duckling was all right? She sailed
Yes,
off with
yes.
a duckling?
Got a photo afterwards, and it was like nothing had happened. So you had nice 4 ducklings next to Mum swimming. Well, at that stage, the kookaburra was still trying to get the grip on his life.
Gosh, how's that, hey? And you thought it might have been dead?
Yeah, I was actually thinking that he drowned it and left it for dead on the banks.
I reckon that kookaburra would probably think twice about going for a duckling again.
Well, they're an animal, so I'm not sure whether they've got a long-term memory. Probably when the hunger sets in, it probably tries again, but maybe not a duckling, something else. But it must have been juicy. But yeah, he didn't get it.
That's a good story. Well, and a duck's a pretty big bird too.
Yeah, ducks are pretty big. Yeah, that's amazing. Well, the kookaburra in itself is not a small bird either. Yeah, I was gobsmacked seeing that. The kookaburra is a meat eater. It loves skinks and, all kinds of critters. But it stays on the post and looks what's going to happen in the spring. So in the spring, it looks for nests of other birds. So in this case, it was a little water bird's nest that the kookaburra was after. So it sits on the post, it watches where the nest is, and then tries his luck, flying towards the nest and pick an egg or a young bird. But the little water bird, of course, doesn't want that to happen, so they go in full force towards the kookaburra and try to chase him away.
And who came off second best?
The kookaburra. Like with the duck, the kookaburra, again, didn't get his meal. So he had to go for some skink or something. Here we are at the other part of the dam, and later at night, about 4 o'clock, you will see the white-faced herons coming in. They've got a sort of a croaky voice, so you can hear them coming in, and they croak, 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 and they either land here on one of those posts of the dam, but most of the time they land on that tree over there, having a good look, because they're not used to people. This is the great thing about this environment here, that a lot of birds, they're completely wild and not used to any human beings. So for photography purposes, it's a bit difficult because you have to be very silent or try to stay still for a long time. Not only you get the white-faced herons, but you get wood duck and the Pacific black duck, and even grebes have brought up some kids on this dam.
What do the white-faced herons eat?
Frogs and lizards or skinks that are living near the water edge. Most of the time you see them foraging on the sides of the dam or on the sides of the creeks. So it can be fish, frogs, insects like dragonflies. If it's there to grab, they'll try.
And their nests?
The nests are in the blue gums, high up in the tree as well. We've had a couple of white-faced herons breeding on our property, and the first year a couple brought up 3 chicks, the next year it brought up 4 chicks. Not only do pardalotes nest in hollow trees, it's also crimson rosellas. They also nest in the same tree. So in this area here we've got kookaburras nesting, starlings nesting, pardalotes nesting, crimson rosellas nesting. So it's just a small area, but it seems to be the way to go for the birds here.
I wonder how they all get on together. Reasonably well, I suppose.
Once they've got their nest, there's nothing that attacks each other because they're way too busy feeding the young ones. Well, at least you have to be around for a couple of hours and keep observing what's happening around the trees. Well, here we're standing in an area where small birds actually occur. This is because the bushes are low and they're still flowering, so there's a lot of caterpillars and a lot of other kinds of different foods around. So what you can find here is the grey fantail, you can find here different types of thornbills, you can find here red-browed finches,
White-browed scrub wrens.
White-browed scrub wrens, you got that really good. Yep, all the little birds that are normally found in this kind of habitat, they will be here.
And they'll all get on well together?
They all get on really well together. They don't mind each other. And the great thing is there's water behind here, so that's what they need. So bushes, soil that is in the shade, and then water close by. How better habitat it is for smaller birds. You put your chair here and you just sit down, have your water and a bit of a sip and see what's flying around. It's very nice.
Do you ever see an owl?
Yeah, I've seen a couple of owls. Most of the time you need to do the spotting at night to see them actually. I've never done that, but I've photographed books in the she oaks in the garden area at the shed site. And I've seen an owl also in this area actually when I was with a nephew just late at night just having a look.
Well, there'd be plenty enough of them here anyway, that's for sure.
Yeah, there will be plenty because you got your possums here as well, so the owls eat the possums, so yeah, there's still enough for them to eat. And this is why I want to say to you, it's so important to put vegetation near your creeks and everything because we need to restore this country.
So here we are down near the creek and look at all the beautiful tree ferns, and this is where a stack of little birds hang out, eh?
Yes, mostly the white-browed scrub wrens love it here. Also the red-browed finches and, believe it or not, the blue wren. Yeah, the water is always nice, it's cooling, especially in the summer where there's shade, as you can see here. For a whole lot of birds the sun is most of the time too warm, and so they hang out in the shade. Since they're close to the water, they can take a bath there as well.
So you'll come down here with your camera and sit for hours, yes?
Yes. You're surrounded by wildlife, but you need to keep still, or you have to be in disguise or something, like a ghillie suit or anything that'll help you. But if you sit still and you don't do nothing, after 50 minutes or so, wildlife just resumes as it was before you came in.
You're very conscious of the wildlife here in Australia because you say there was very little back in Holland.
That's true. During my lifetime in the Netherlands, I've seen wildlife populations go down basically to zero. And when I came to Australia 20 years ago, I thought, luckily in Australia it's not that bad. So what we've done here is we just bought a parcel of farmland with a creek that went through it, and we've restored and revegetated the whole creek and fenced it off. Yeah, this is one of our great projects in life, that we've been able to restore wildlife. The amount of birds that go through our property is more than half of what flies around in the district. That is due to Rosie and me doing so much revegetation and also setting up a large garden for all the honey eaters and birds that love to be in the garden.
Now, many people don't like blackbirds, but you're actually very fond of them, aren't you?
I love blackbirds. The blackbird is actually a native of where I come from. Amazing that the blackbird actually is here in Australia too. So the sounds of the Netherlands are also the sounds of Gippsland. They probably are a bit more fierce in breeding than the native birds here. So a lot of introduced species are pushing away the native species. The sound of the blackbird is something that I will remember the whole of my life because of my youth. I had to go to bed before sunset, and that's when the blackbirds sing. So that was fantastic to hear the blackbird singing here at night as well. It brings you back to peacetime.
Now, this is a very peaceful place down here. The sound of the running water is just gorgeous, and when you're sitting down here with your camera, you must be pretty much in heaven.
Yes, I am, and especially later at night when the birds come and start bathing. That's the time that you want to be here. So I've seen blue wrens bathing here, yellow robins, the normal small birds, and it's beautiful. This is so peaceful. To have a creek like this running through your property it's magic.
So they like to have a shower before they go to bed?
Yes, they do. Like every living thing, maybe. Birds are quite regulated as well, or regimented as human beings. They wake up in the morning and they say good morning to each other. And you might wake up as well and say good morning to the birds when they're starting calling each other. Maybe a shower at night and a good morning in the morning with breakfast. I wanted to say something about environmental management that we've done here around the creek. Basically, the only thing that we've done is eradicate the weeds, like blackberries and thistles and such. We haven't chopped up any trees or anything. Anything that falls down, we let it rot by itself, because that way you will get a soil that's got more moisture in it, and so less chance of burning, and you will get all kinds of birds back into your property. If you clean everything up, there's nothing for them to eat. So this is the way to get your birds and wildlife. You can get koalas and everything come back to your property if you just leave it. The thing that it happens on our property is, I find it quite special, that we've created something that has the circle of life going again. You know, it comes from small animals, and then bigger animals are starting to eat the smaller, and then the bigger ones eat those ones, and finally you get to the eagles, and you want a healthy environment. So this is what happens. We've got also a photo of a yellow robin that was nesting around this area. And again, the nest of the yellow robin is very small as well as from the grey Ferndale, and it's really, you have to follow the birds rather than do you find the nest. So you follow the bird where it goes. If it has a routine, it flies to a certain spot every now and then you might be able to find the nest as well.
Now the butcherbird, he'd be around here too, wouldn't he?
Oh yes, the butcherbird is frequently visiting this place. His call again is fantastic. I always compare it with pan flute.
Well, I don't reckon I know the sound of his call, because I don't reckon he's around my place. I spot one once in a blue moon.
Well, it has a long beak, specially equipped to get beetles and small critters and everything. It has a nicer song, I think, than the kookaburra.
And you and Rosie had a pair of young crows. I call them crows. You call them ravens. They put on performances for you outside your window, didn't they? And especially jacked up when you stopped feeding them.
Well, the parents of those two, I actually like the Australian ravens, so I started to try to communicate with them, because they're very smart birds. So I thought, I might be able to get them closer to me than normal for wildlife. And so every now and then I just left a little bit of food, which I'm against it, but I did it anyway. And so one day when they brought the chicks up, those two parents, they actually came and showed the young kids. That was a nice moment. The parents now aren't there anymore, but those kids, they still come around. And when they were young, they were sitting on a bench that we had, looking into the window. They sort of call in pairs. I say, well, one calls and then the other one calls. So they're wah, 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 wah. It was very funny. And still nowadays, I sometimes hear wah, 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 wah in the distance, and I know that those two are there still.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for telling us so much wonderful information about the birds here.
Yeah, well, my pleasure, Christine. It's been fantastic. Yeah, I enjoyed showing you around.
Birds are singing in the trees, all the leaves are falling in the breeze. The views all around are the best you've seen, living on the land. Take another stroll in the morning sun. The sun's always brighter when the spring's begun. Family all together when the day is done.